You're in the right place. Hello, I'm Dan Harris.
Hi, and I'm Claudia Köstler.
You're over here, over there. So, welcome to Over Here, Over There, a global conversation about how we see ourselves and how others see us. I'm your host, Dan Harris, and for the next 45 minutes or so, we'll be asking some stellar guests from Germany, France, Taiwan, and the USA about our topic of conversation today. What does cuisine say about a country? This is a recorded podcast, but you can send us your feedback via our website at overhereoverthere.org or on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. I'm joined by my fellow podcaster, Claudia Köstler, editor of the Süddeutsche Zeitung in Munich. Claudia grew up in Bavaria and has lived in California, London, and Iceland, and in fact speaks Icelandic. Claudia, you've traveled the world and we've had excellent culinary representation here today. Do you have a favorite cuisine, or would you rather, wait to hear what the panelists have to say?
I can't wait. Hello, everyone. Well, to say the least, for me, cuisine is culture, comfort, and art at the same time. And also, it takes me always back to my travels and my experiences. So it is kind of a little holiday in my mouth and my mind when I taste something like a Reuben on rye or a Cornish pasty or something like that. Favorite cuisine? That is a good question. I think I'm fairly adventurous and traditional at the same time. So a little bit of everything, a dash here, a dash there. But can't wait to hear what our guests have to say.
I love that expression, holiday in the mouth. That is just fantastic. I can remember that. So I'd like to welcome our other guests, award-winning French chef and restaurateurs Yves and Elizabeth Ogrodsky, who manage the award-winning L'Artisan restaurant in Cheltenham, which recently added their splendid horseshoe patisserie to the menu in honor of Cheltenham's famous racecourse. Our next guest, when she's not in lockdown, Asian cookery presenter Pamela Chen, is demonstrating the delights of Asian cuisine in front of hundreds on the high seas around the world and at numerous exhibitions, video shoots, and corporate events. And we're delighted also to have a true Renaissance man, the food writer, musician, coffee aficionado, and CEO of 30 Bird Media, Adam Wilcox, based in Rochester, New York, who I'm fortunate to also call my brother-in-law. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to discuss what cuisine says about a country, which we already know is a lot. But we want to hear from the experts themselves to get past the cliches and find the authenticity of their cuisine and what it means to them. So welcome and thank you all for being virtually over here and over there. Let's start. Claudia, just to go back to you real quickly. What does the cuisine in Germany say about its culture? Just to lead us off. What do you think when... Usually it's, when you do over here, over there, we ask what other countries make of, someone else's cuisine. But let's start from the inside and work out. What do you think Germany's cuisine means to the rest of the world? And you can include beer if you want to.
I get the hint. Well, let me start with a quotation from Neil MacGregor. General de Gaulle once famously complained about the difficulty of governing a country with 246 different cheeses. Germany, it's reckoned, has 1,200 different kinds of wurst. There's a real challenge to a government. So Germany is now unified, but it was not a unified nation up until 1871. So it used to be a rather collection of distinct and separate kingdoms and principalities. And even after the unification, we are hardly homogeneous, despite outside perceptions maybe. And we are still marked by clear regional differences. And we are identified by our regions, rivalries, and differences. And so is our food. It may look the same to a foreigner, but locals will beg to differ, I tell you. Someone from Prussia has a completely different palate than someone from Bavaria. And we are all part of Germany, and we have sort of a national food tradition, but we will always quarrel about who has the best food, which area has the best food, the best beer, and the best bread. And locals will not hesitate to tell you it's this hyper-specific region that has its best.
Yeah, I am torn between bread in Bavaria and that traditional French baguette that I used to get in Saint-Germain-en-Laye. It just no, those fresh. It comes fresh every day. I don't know. Maybe I can if I had enough money, I'd live in both places. So, but let's turn to Eve and Elizabeth. You say quite delightfully, I would say, on your website, why not enjoy a piece of France without going abroad, which is reassuring when travel is so restricted nowadays through the pandemic. You're originally from Provence, but your cuisine has influences from different regions. What impression of France and French cuisine do you want your customers to walk away with from your restaurant?
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
We want to give our customer the full package, not only the quality and the diversity of our cuisine, but also the smells of French cuisine, like, for example, our homemade bread, the ambiance, the accent. we want them to be transported in France, but in a local restaurant. And some of our customers tell us they feel on holidays. When they leave the restaurant with these feelings, it's a mission accomplished for us, definitely.
And Yves, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, well, the France, as said also Claudia about Germany, France has each region has its own specialty and products. We can name them in Bourgogne, the beef bourguignon, the coq au vin; in Lorraine, the quiche Lorraine; in Provence, the bouillabaisse; Brittany, the crepe. We could name thousands of them. And just a little adjustment about the cheeses. We are now up to 365, which is one a day. Roughly per year. But lots of towns have their own specialty, food specialty. It can be savory specialty or sweets, like in Saint-Tropez. I'm thinking about the Tropézienne gâteau, which is one of my favorite. And there is something very important in French, a word which is very difficult to translate, what we call the terroir, which means altogether the earth, the soil, the weather, authenticity, roots, the same products or the same sometime specialty, which will remain in different terroir, will not taste exactly the same. And to highlight all these French regions, at L'Artisan, what we have created is what we call the Tour de France set menu. It's about having the opportunity to take the customer for them to discover different regions of France. So every fortnight, we offer a 2 or 3 course set menu and a pre-theater weekdays in the evening, where we put in the spotlight one French region, like Normandy, Corsica, or Guadeloupe, Brittany, etc. And we respect the fundamental preparation, but we had sometimes a little personal twist. Even with the lockdown, we're still doing it in the takeaway service. But about the specialties, since we arrived in Cheltenham, because we can't help it, we are French, we love our town, and we want to have a food product related to our town. That's how we came to create the horseshoe. We're talking about this together, Dan, and we would love all of you to taste it, because the idea was to create a food product related to the town, and that's how we came up with that idea of playing with the word, calling it the horseshoe, spelled CHOUX at the end, and which is a base of choux pastry with cream topped with a chocolate in the shape of a horseshoe. It's in our culture to love food. Working in the food industry as a chef or waiter is a proper job in France. There is hundreds of catering schools which train from the age of 15, but not only chefs. There is bakers, there are butchers, waiters, waitress, and by the way, Elizabeth and I met in one of these catering schools long time ago then. But food and wine run through our veins in France.
Yes, I'm going to ask you about the kind of the professional side of culinary service there as well later on, because I was impressed with that. And thanks, Eve. That's great. If I can just turn to Pamela, you've done many demonstrations of Asian cuisines, and I've seen you in action several times. And I remember the confidence you tried to instill in your audiences about preparing Asian cuisine. What is your message, though, to those audiences who want to be, shall we say, fluent in Asian cooking?
I'll always say keep it simple, because I think the very anglicized Asian food, East Asian food, make people think it's a really difficult cuisine to master. But I think the truth is quite the opposite. And I've always said to people, if they can make shepherd's pie or bolognese, they can do Oriental stir fry. So I just say keep it simple. And that worldwide, the various cuisines, you always start with some sort of fat and some sort of ingredient that has some sort of fragrance, and then you start adding the spices and herbs of the region to make it the character. And for my cuisine, my cupboard is really simple apart from the ginger and the garlic. I have soy sauce, I have rice wine and a rice vinegar, sesame oil. That's kind of the basic, and just play with it. Just start simple, not everything all in one go. Just learn to appreciate the little simple ingredients, that what it gives you, and then start playing. Gives you a variety as well. Because I remember once had a conversation and this lady said, "Oh, I love doing stir fries. I do it a lot, but it tastes the same always." So I asked her what she does, and basically every time she has garlic, ginger, onion, chili, 5 spice, everything in at the same time, I say, "Well, why don't you try just garlic this time, and next time you try ginger? Then the time after, maybe you put those 2 together. Then you try a third ingredient and do different combinations. Then before you know, you have loads of different dishes." And that was a real light bulb moment for her. And that was brilliant to see. Yeah.
I think you should teach golf, because it
But
needs
I
to be
can't
simplified.
play golf. So that's
The golf swing. Think about that. Adam, I'm familiar with the area you live in, very much so, because I grew up there in upstate New York. But it's blessed with a variety of cuisine, much of which you have tasted and written about. Can I ask just a question, which hopefully will lead on to something? If a good friend from overseas was visiting and was only there for one evening and wanted to have an authentic upstate New York meal, what would you provide him or her?
So, Dan, you know what Rochester's one indigenous meal is, right?
Well, Zweigel's
hot dogs
right?
can be part of it, but the indigenous Rochester meal is a thing called, and I'm not making this up, the garbage plate. And
Oh my God.
the garbage plate came about.
You're doing down my home.
No,
man.
I'm going to talk up the garbage plate. So we have many diners in the United States, and for a while there was a bit of a cliche that diners were run by Greek people, and a lot of them are, particularly in a certain era they were. And one of these Greek-owned diners in Rochester invented a late-night drunk person food called the garbage plate, which is some form of meat, either hot dog or hamburger, piled with your choice of sides. But the classics are a fried potato product, very cold macaroni salad, and then something that in Rochester we call hot sauce, which is kind of a fine-grained meat chili with Greek spicing. At the original place, which is a place here called Nick Tahoe's, they're truly horrible. Every element is down market, and it swims in a bath of oil on a paper plate, and it can only be enjoyed when very drunk, very late at night. But what's happened is what's happened with many sort of down home foods is they've been taken over by people who know what they're doing. So everybody in our area makes a version of the garbage plate, the trash plate, the dumpster plate. They have all different names because there are legal battles over these things. But when it's made well, when, let's say, we have a Zweigel's hot dog on there, a white hot, which is kind of like a bratwurst, but not exactly. And then really good crisp fries, double fried, great mac salad. And then the meat sauce is made with love. It'll have fresh chopped onions on top, and then yellow mustard. It must be yellow mustard. It cannot be good mustard. It must be yellow mustard. It's quite delicious. So I have many times done exactly what you're saying. Somebody's in town for one night and they're like, "What should we eat?" And I say, "Well, you're going to think I'm crazy, but we're going to go get garbage plates." And I've never had a dissatisfied customer.
Wow.
Do you tell them the name
Absolutely.
of it? Do you tell them the name?
Afterwards.
Yes. That's part of the fun.
Right. I think it's lucky that I have a restricted diet, Adam. But I'll take your point there. Okay, but
Dan, we
thank you
could
for
make
that rendition. I mean, I'm not that familiar with them, to be honest. I'm not that familiar with the garbage, but I've heard of it. But I'm a gluten-free, wheat-free, yeast-free, everything kind of guy. And
it can be
so
done.
I think
Dan.
I missed out on
we
all
can
that.
do this for you.
Claudia, I just still want to go back to you because you described one dish in particular, which I said, fantastic. I'd go for that. Your favorite dish being Wiener Schnitzel.
Yeah. How can it not be?
What makes it unique? And if someone were to come and visit you and you wanted to ensure them, say, make sure it's done like this.
Yeah. Sure. If I have foreigners visiting me, I will always go for a Wiener Schnitzel as a kind of a demonstration of our cooking here. Simply because here at this corner where I live in Bavaria, there have always been strong connections to Austria and Italy, even Switzerland and France. So you have your famous bread varieties here, your sausages, pork knuckles and dumplings, but of course the Wiener Schnitzel, which originates in Austria. And you have to have a very good quality of meat, and it has to be real. You have to have the breading right. So you have to have good bread, which turns into the breading. And that essentially is the key to it. And the veal has to be cut very thinly sliced and carefully salted, seasoned in a way. And you have to take your time preparing this dish. And also you have to have the right level of frying oil, which shall not be anything with a too fragrant flavor. And the temperature is quite important. And then if you get all this right, you have a finished product that is crispy, savory, and very delicate. And if you combine that with a nice potato salad, it is a perfect meal and a perfect example of this regional food we have, which is, of course, a bit traditional and it's a bit rich on calories in a way. But you have to remember this is a part of the world where people were working hard and they have to climb the mountains up and down to chase the cows. So when they got finally back in their huts in the evening, they needed a substantial meal. And this is how it came about. And this is quite the famous Wiener Schnitzel in a way, which is not an everyday food, but food for a weekend or something like that, when it's a bit, or for a celebration. So this is my comfort food when I have to cater for friends and family, and also, of course, for foreigners. And then you have dishes like bœuf la motte, which are strongly influenced by France, which is kind of a variety to bœuf à la mode, if you will be familiar with that. And we took it over here in Bavaria and refined it a little bit to our taste buds, and is quite traditional, but almost forgotten now. But once in a while you come across it, and it's a very delicate sort of, how can I describe it? It's a stew which has a fine balance of sweet and salty and a bit sour. It has red wine in it, and it is one of my earliest memories as a child, where all my taste buds were tingled, because it has all this interchangeable, delicate flavors in it. So those are two typical staples of our food. One a bit more common in the world, but it has to be done right. And one which is getting a bit forgotten, but I think it shall be revived in a way. It has something that could be revived in a way.
So, well, the next time I'm in Munich, you've got to point me in the right direction to the Wiener Schnitzel
right into my kitchen.
That sounds too good, too good. Eve and Elizabeth, we had a conversation the other day, and you were saying it's in light of Brexit and what impact it might have. And we also talked about employ French staff from, directly from France. You bring them over, and maybe that will be impinged by Brexit. And also just natural ingredients. What do you do? How do you source that? Are you going to be able to overcome that?
Well, the fresh ingredients will not really be a problem for us to find, because there is some superb ingredients all around the UK to prepare the way I prepare the French dishes. All the vegetables, dry goods, fantastic meat all around. Like I can use all the fresh ingredients over here. I just have to cook them my way, and the French way, obviously. And I still have the opportunity to have some particular products coming from France. The only thing is the prices are going to rise. That's the one of the most biggest concern we can have. But mainly, the most worrying would be more about recruiting our French team, as the conditions are tougher since the Brexit, and they have to, if they have to speak a very good English to be able to come over here, I think the desired ambience will no longer exist, because it's going to be difficult. Our customer love to be served by waiter or waitress with a very strong French accent. They like to see them struggling when they try to pronounce some words. And these customers who try as well to speak French, that's all about the communication between them. They love to know that behind the dishes where they have eaten, there is a genuine French trained chef. But we are not sure that with the post-Brexit will be an easy situation for us as employing people from France. It will become a real challenge, unfortunately.
You're listening to Over Here, Over There, and I'm your host, Dan Harris, with fellow podcaster Claudia Kussler, senior editor of the Süddeutsche Zeitung, and our guests, award-winning French restaurateurs Yves and Elizabeth Ogretsky, Asian cookery presenter Pamela Chen, and food writer, musician, and CEO of 30 Bird Productions, Adam Wilcox. And our topic is, what does cuisine say about a country's culture? Pamela, same thing about natural ingredients and obtaining them. You have any difficulties or not?
Well, as I said earlier, I keep my cupboard very simple. So the stable ingredients, the soy sauce, sesame oil, and rice wine, that's widely available in all the supermarkets, really. And other ingredients, I just use what's around me. I'm very pragmatic in my approach about ingredients. We're very adventurous people in terms of food. Asian people tend to be. And there's always new dishes coming out using new ingredients. So I just take what's around us, the seasonal vegetables and fruits, and I use them with the Oriental flavor into it. So I don't find it a problem at all. I mean, one of my favorite things is stir-fry sprouts. I will stir-fry with ginger and sometimes with a bit of shiitake mushroom and, with sesame oil at the end. And that is a totally Oriental dish, or a totally Taiwanese dish in the flavor, but the ingredient is not something I'd ever seen in Taiwan. And, like things like beetroot. I never ever saw beetroot when I was growing up. And now it's so fashionable in Taiwan. So think the ingredients are changing all the time because the international traffic, in terms of media, what you see in media and also what's available in supermarkets, it just changes along. And that's how I approach it, really.
Adam, what dishes really stood the test of time there in upstate New York or in New York in general?
What we have is a giant melting pot here. So a lot of what's kind of indigenous around here, what I would call indigenous, meaning local, let's say local, has to do with regional foods that grew up around poor people of a particular ethnic extraction coming to a particular town. So, like I said, the Greek diner gave birth to the garbage plate, but down the highway from us is a town called Utica, and in Utica they have something called tomato pie, which is kind of a focaccia with a fresh tomato sauce on it. It's not a pizza. It's tomato pie. And that's done because they have a lot of Italian Americans in Utica and a lot of bakers, strangely. So There they have tomato pie. Down in Binghamton, where I grew up, we have something called a speedy, which is of disputed extraction. There's Italian Americans and Greek Americans who claim to have invented it, but basically they took a salad dressing with their kind of spicing and marinated lamb originally in cubes, and then cooked that over a fire, and you eat it in a piece of cheap bread. And that's called a speedy. And there's Buffalo has the beef on weck. Weck is a mispronunciation of the end of Kimmelwick, which is the caraway seed bun that I think is originally German. Am I right about that, Claudia? Maybe
could be
Kimmelwick, or maybe it's German in America.
Could it
there
be
you
Kümmel?
go. It could be.
Yeah, it's a piece of bread with cumin.
Yeah, this is usually here. It's caraway, not cumin, but maybe
might be
it
the
could have
same
cumin.
origin. Yeah,
might be the same origin. There's also usually salt on the outside of it, and that's a stewed beef with its juice put on that bun, and that's all there is to it. So a lot of the things that are local in upstate New York are these sort of peasant foods that come out of a particular ethnicity. Now, New York State, when you say it to people from around the world, you say you're from New York State, they assume you're from New York City. And, I'm from, what are we here, Dan, 500 or 600 kilometers from New York City? It
Yes.
is not close. But New York City is its own thing. Completely different. But even there, this sort of principle holds. There's the New York deli, where the Reuben comes from, and many other deli sandwiches, and all the Jewish American food that's down there, bagels, versions of bagels that don't seem to exist in the old world and only exist in New York City. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'm trying.
No, you're giving us a tour of New York, basically, which is great as far as what's notable in each of those areas and what stood the test of time. So, that's great. That's great. The other thing that needs to be dispelled I'm thinking of people who, go back and forth and visit and have an opinion of something. Like here, it's fish and chips, obviously in the UK. And fish and chips actually was originated from a Jewish immigrant in 1863 and brought it over and developed it. What I'm after is the difference between cliche and what you would recommend.
Often we used to hear that French food is rich, heavy. So, of course, in North area like Normandy, Brittany, or Nord, Pas-de-Calais, because it's colder, maybe, so they tend to use a lot of ingredients like butter, cream, fat. But we come from Provence, and because the climate is much milder, it's a little like Italian food. So we use more virgin olive oil, lots of vegetables like tomato. I hope I say that right. I didn't say tomato. Aubergine, courgette, peppers. So when I hear that French food is rich and heavy, I don't know how to take it, is it a compliment or not? Because I don't think it is heavy or rich. So this is sometimes the kind of cliche. And another cliche, of course, when not customers, people if they don't know about food, for them, French are only eating snails and frog legs.
Do you think they get that from the famous Cordon Bleu school, that when you go there, you've got to know those, the heavy creams and everything else? That's that type of cooking. But you're talking, obviously, there's a lot more variety across the regions.
Of course, but when I arrived in England, I learned a lot of things, like about food, like the onion around the neck, I never heard before. So it was funny, very funny for me about the cliche. The cliche I even didn't know, and even the cordon bleu, I've heard of it, but it's not something I know a lot about that. That's why it was really, there is some cliche which is very weird, but now we start to get used of it. So it's okay. It's okay. We accept it.
Pamela, for you, what's the cliche that challenges you the most?
The group mentality, the
Ah,
gravy.
yes.
It's just so not like the real thing. I grew up with food that is clean tasting, and that's what, my audience and people who have eaten my food have repeatedly said, your food is so clean. But if you go to a restaurant in this country, it's completely opposite. Everything's drenched in gravy. And I think it's just that is one of the biggest things that I have to try to educate people. And the other thing is about this high heat, high fat cooking, flame licking kind style cooking. I've never ever been to any households that's got that. And also, I know the other one, wok. People think you have to have a wok to cook East Asian food. My mother did it. My mother hasn't used a wok for probably 30 years. And I only bought a wok to put my giant steamers inside. That was the only reason I bought it. It's just, you can cook with anything. A pot is a pot is a pot. At the end of the day, sorry, this is probably sounds so wrong for professional chefs like Eve and Elizabeth. But I'm a home cook and I'm very pragmatic about how things are done. It's a pot. You've got a saucepan to stir fry in, do it. Yeah. So you don't have to have a wok.
That's good news. And this is a Claudia question. So Claudia, cut in anytime you want. It's about the greeting. Have you eaten yet is a typical Chinese greeting, equivalent to how are you? But when a German asks you that, he is probably concerned about your energy level and possibly will grab you a sandwich right away. And
Quite right.
if you answer no. And it's just a matter of, given that we're talking with professionals here and a food writer and people who appreciate a good meal, just in your daily conversation as professionals as well as people who just enjoy food, how much does it dominate your culture? Because, when I go to Germany, I feel like 50% or 70% of the time, I'm talking about food. I'm talking about what's next. Yep, I get done with one meal. We're talking about the next. But also on a professional level, obviously it's your business. But how ingrained is it into your life, really?
I'm surprised that you find that 50% of your conversations here are food related, because I don't experience that at all in my daily life. It might have something to do with the fact that you are an exotic factor at a table here in Germany, being a British person with American roots. And it might be some kind of a small talk topic that naturally comes because of that. Because I spend most of my weekdays in the office, of course. And apart from the question, what's on the menu in the canteen, food is not really a topic in everyday life. I don't ask my coworkers if they have eaten or what they have eaten yesterday or what they are going to eat. But what I do notice is that there is kind of a longing to get it back to the center of attention with people. Once you conquered this topic, I get the impression that people would like to have it more center stage in their lives, but it's not there yet, apart from maybe questions about some sort of lifestyle food, like veganism is quite a topic. But the everyday food here is not as deeply rooted in our daily small talk, to be frank.
Anybody else want to jump in? Adam, you're writing about food all the time.
For me, because of what I do and who I am, a large majority of my conversations that are social or about food, I don't think that says much about the culture as much as it does about just the life I've led. My brother commonly says that in our house we didn't have religion, we had food, and that was religion. We were very ritualized about meals. We ate at exactly to the second 5:30 every day, and my mother made something pretty special every day. It was such a thing with me that my friends knew. So I'd be hanging out with friends, and one of them would go, "Oh my God, Adam, you got to be home for dinner in 5 minutes." And I'd go, because we were so ritualized about it. And then for the last 25 years, I've written about food. So it self-selects with what my topics of conversation are and who I'm talking to. But I think in the United States, food in a lot of ways is much less central than it is in a lot of cultures, but that has changed. It's changed enormously in the 25 years or so I've been writing about food. The audience is so much more educated than they used to be, and there are so many more options for different kinds of ethnic cuisine that you can go out for. So many resources for how to cook those things that my guess is it's more central in the conversation than it's ever been.
Yes, and I was going to ask Eve, Pamela, and Elizabeth the same question in a way. Again, the influences of cuisines from abroad coming into the United States or into Britain. From your perspective, being a French restaurateur, you've seen the influence, you've seen the food increase in quality, have you not here? The palate has changed. I mean, I could vouch for that. When I was first here, I don't want to tell you what I was eating back in 1979, 1980. It wasn't great. You had limited choice. Now it's quite different, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, it has improved a lot. We've been here 18 years. I remember when I first arrived, going in some places for a meal. It was a nightmare. It was awful. Even going for shopping in some supermarkets, I was crying. I couldn't find anything. But nowadays, it's far better. And I even tell you what, since I've been working in England, that's where I met some of the best chefs I ever met. Because I think France has taken the food and the way on a professional way to provide food, has taken this like patrimoine, like something which is they own, where all the other countries had to learn about it and had to improve about it. And that's what I found in England. And it became far better than ever. I would say that in the last 10, 15 years, what's offered in different restaurants, in different places, it's far better than what it used to be. And there is so many more products available when you go around, shopping around in different supermarkets. You can find any type of products you want from everywhere. And that helps the people to improve their skills and what they like about food. Because back in France, food has always been taken very seriously. It is a way of life in France. Only a decade ago, working people had 2 hours break for lunch just for their meal, and they were always talking about it. And even us, my wife and I, Elizabeth and I, we live for food. We keep talking about food all day long, and even on holidays when some people are going to visit a museum or when they are talking about landscape, what we talk about is restaurants and food and specialties. When we remember seriously, when we remember somewhere in the world where we've been, our memories is always about food, thing we tasted. And we went to South Africa. I remember the taste of the antelope I eaten. I remember the taste of the wine from Stellenbosch. When we've been in Germany, it was all about the schnitzel. Always talking about food. But over here in England, it has improved a lot. And there is a lot of many very good chefs now with great ideas.
Pamela, you present all the time when we're not in lockdown, as I said at the very beginning. But it's also education, what you're doing. And have you seen it? Do you feel like you've made an impact, or have you seen an impact made as far as Asian cooking
I
here?
think so. So I'm going to give you a little example. My children, I remember when my youngest was about age 12. One day he said, we can tell the food is getting a bit better here in terms of the level of authenticity. Because he said, before the chili, whatever sauce, whatever food you buy from supermarket, when it says hot, it's wussy, it's nothing. But now when they say hot, it's hot. So so our British people's acceptance of authentic food has the standards gone up, definitely. Acceptance gone up, and we are seeing a little more genuine food coming through. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's still a long way to go. But yeah.
You're listening to Over Here, Over There, an and I'm your host, Dan Harris, with fellow podcaster Claudia Kussler, and our culinary guests, Eve and Elizabeth Oglatsky, Pamela Chen, who you just heard from there, and Adam Wilcox. And we're discussing what cuisine means to a country's culture. We're coming down to the end, and I just want to make sure we ask each of you just quickly, trends. What do you see that's going to be the next trend in your country or your region? Starting with Adam. And don't say the garbage plate, please.
Oh, goodness. You had to start with me. It's hard to see the trend that is upcoming. I know one thing that's blowing up around here right now is Middle Eastern, broadly speaking, Middle Eastern food and food that is a fusion of Middle Eastern food and other things. And I think that's likely to continue. Those cuisines, Eastern Mediterranean foods, lend themselves well to the dietary needs that seem to be becoming more and more important to people, whether it be avoiding gluten or avoiding animal products or just avoiding red meats. Cuisines based in those kinds of cuisines are, I think, easier to make work in those ways. So I'm gonna go with that.
Oh, right. Eve and Elizabeth, what is the trend, do you think? That is it the regionalness that through education and awareness that is changing our perception of French cooking, the different regions that we're being exposed to? Or is there another trend that you can point to?
It's a bit difficult for me to answer to that question because I'm so traditional, so focused in the regional traditional recipes that it's a bit difficult for me to answer to this. I would say that every decade has its own evolution in tendencies. I think we are going towards less and less meat into the food. I see a lot of traditional recipes which are specialties which are twisted in a different way. We are going to a vegetarian type of food, but it's difficult to say because at the same time I see the people asking more and more for authentic, what we call the grandmother cooking type. A bit difficult for me to
going
answer
back
this.
to your roots in a way.
Going back to the roots, but in a healthier way, I would say, and more concerned in environmental and animal welfare. You see a different way to approach things, but still wanted to keep the roots and go back to the roots of traditional things. Yeah, I think people start to be fed up with the ready to eat things. That's what I think. I hope.
I can see it. I can see it quite similar here in Germany to what I've heard here before. I, in my surrounding, notice a strong path towards slow food and veganism, and also going back to the roots, to traditional recipes, but trying to make them a bit lighter, a bit more modern, and always with a concern about where the products come from. Are they sustainable? Keeping the transport links close by. So in a way, it's twofold. It's kind of going back to the roots, but with a modern twist and with a modern mind about sustainability. And with a twist, I also include taking the best of the world and integrate it to your own diet in a way. So less is more in a way,
Would you call that fusion, you mean, in a way?
Yeah, but deeply rooted in a quite regional way.
Actually, we are following some programs on the TV, for example, cooking programs. Obviously, we are not watching movies or things like that. We are watching cooking programs, and we saw some programs in France where there is a lot of chefs, particularly pastry chefs, who are trying to keep the traditional recipe, old type traditional recipe, but by lighting up them with, for example, the sugar, they are trying to make the desserts with less sugar. It's still the same original traditional recipe, but twisted in something lighter. And I believe it's the same in the old type of traditional cooking. And I do it myself. We use, for example, to thicken the sauces. with the traditional roux made of butter and flour. But now we try to find other ways using different ingredients to try to have the same result by having something lighter.
Do you feel that's the pressure trying to accommodate the healthier kind of a approach? Do you feel that pressure, or do you want to do that?
No, I want to do it. Definitely, because I'm open. Cooking, there is so many things which has been made already and discovered in cooking. You always want to try to obtain the same result by having something more attractive, more modern, lighter, healthier. So, because as Elizabeth said earlier, some part of France, the cooking is all about butter and cream. And if you go in Brittany and try the quignaman, it's all
there's nothing wrong with that.
very, very good. It's fantastic.
Indeed, it is.
Did you hear about the
I'm
quignaman
there.
in Brittany? All of you. It's a third of bread dough, a third of butter, and a third of sugar.
Sign me up.
As simple as that. But
Wow.
it is
Hey.
so good.
That's the next Eve. The next podcast is we're going to go there and do that. We're going to have show from there.
Definitely.
I tell you what,
I'm on.
Yeah.
during the lockdown, I've done some cookery lesson through the Zoom for my family, my son, my daughter, from everywhere in the world, because south of France, Geneva, Dubai, everywhere. And we've done the quignaman. And they were all scared and very surprised because they are in the age, millennial age, and they don't want what they say, rich and heavy things. But when I started to explain them how it was made and we made it together, at the end, they wanted to make it again because it's so good.
Fantastic. Pamela, you have the last word here as far as trends in your area. What can we look out for?
Well, in UK, I think because of lockdown, I think it's changed people's view on, it's influenced a lot in terms of supporting local and eating local food, supporting local producers. So I think perhaps that's going to become stronger. And in terms of Taiwan, I think that the fusion food is just going to go even crazier. I've seen some amazing creations, and I think that's just going to keep growing because we're exposed to so many different cultures and because of travel and all that. So I think the fusion food is going to go crazy in Taiwan.
It's great to hear. Nice way to end it. So thank you very much, everyone. That was delightful. Thank you, Claudia Kussler, Eve and Elizabeth Ogrodsky, Pamela Chen, and Adam Wilcox. Before we close, we'd like to remind our listeners that they can subscribe to our podcast by the button below. Over here, over there, can be found on most major podcast platforms. You can also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And today's podcast show notes can be found on our website, overhereoverthere.org. If you want to be a patron, we have a button for that too on our website, and we'd very much appreciate your support. Polite, insightful, humorous, and constructive comments are also welcome in any language, so please be in touch. Check out our website for our next unmissable podcast. Until then, thank you for listening to Over Here, Over There.